It was almost midnight when Sofia Reyes made the biggest mistake of her life, and she did not even know it yet. She was sitting on her bed, phone in hand, laughing at a message from her best friend, Chloe. They had been joking all night about a dating app disaster, sending each other bold, funny messages just to make each other laugh. Sofia typed one last message, meant purely as a joke between friends. "Careful, I might just show up at your door and make you regret ignoring me all week. You know I always get what I want." She hit send, laughed at her own joke, and put the phone down to get ready for bed. She never imagined that instead of landing in Chloe's chat, that message had gone to a completely different number, one saved wrong in her phone after a mix-up months earlier during a work project. A number that belonged to a man she had never met, and never wanted to meet. Alexander Cross. The city called him many things. The boss. The ghost. The man who ran half of the underground business in the city without ever raising his voice. He did not need threats. His silence alone was enough to make grown men shake. He sat in his penthouse office that night, a glass of whiskey in one hand, reviewing reports from his men, when his phone buzzed once on the table beside him. He glanced at it without much interest, expecting another report from his network. Instead, he saw a message from an unknown number, bold and confident, talking about showing up at someone's door and always getting what she wanted. Alexander read it twice, one eyebrow raising slightly. No one spoke to him like that. No one dared. His men whispered around him. His enemies feared even sending him a formal letter without permission. And yet here was a random, unknown number, sending him something that sounded almost like a challenge, playful and fearless, clearly meant for someone else, though the sender clearly did not know that yet. He set his glass down slowly. A small, dangerous smile appeared on his face, the kind of smile his men had learned to fear because it usually meant trouble for someone. He typed back a short reply, only 4 words long, but heavy enough to change Sofia's entire life. "Bring her to me." Sofia was already asleep when the message arrived, her phone buzzing quietly on the nightstand beside her, completely unaware that somewhere across the city, a dangerous man had just decided she was now part of his world, whether she liked it or not. The next morning started like any other day for Sofia. She worked at a small coffee shop near downtown, saving money for design school while trying to build a normal, quiet life for herself, far away from any kind of danger or drama. She had grown up watching her mother struggle alone, and Sofia had promised herself a simple future, nothing complicated, nothing dangerous. She was wiping down the counter when the coffee shop door opened, and 2 men in dark suits walked in, their presence immediately changing the entire mood of the small shop. Customers quieted down. Even the shop owner, usually loud and cheerful, suddenly became very focused on the cash register, avoiding eye contact. The 2 men walked straight toward the counter, their eyes locking onto Sofia with an unsettling kind of certainty, as if they already knew exactly who she was. "Sofia Reyes?" one of them asked, his voice calm but firm. Sofia's stomach dropped. "Yes." "Can I help you?" "You need to come with us," the man said simply, as if this was a normal request, as if asking a stranger to leave her job and follow 2 unknown men was an everyday occurrence. "I am sorry, what?"
"No."
"I do not even know who you are," Sofia said, stepping back slightly, her heart starting to race. "Mr. Cross requests your presence," the second man said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "It would be wise not to make this difficult." The name meant nothing to Sofia at first, but the fear on the faces of everyone else in the coffee shop told her enough. Whoever this Mr. Cross was, he was someone people did not say no to. "I do not know any Mr. Cross," Sofia said, trying to keep her voice steady despite the fear building inside her chest. "There has been some kind of mistake." "There is no mistake," the first man said, stepping closer. "You sent him a message last night. He would like to discuss it with you personally." Sofia's mind raced, trying to remember any message she could have possibly sent to a stranger, until suddenly it hit her, the joke text meant for Chloe, the one about showing up at someone's door. Her stomach twisted painfully as she realized the horrifying mistake she had made without even knowing it. "That message was not meant for him," she said quickly. "It was a mistake, a joke between friends. Please, just let me explain over the phone or something." "Mr. Cross does not take explanations over the phone," the man said simply. "He prefers things in person." Before Sofia could argue further, the 2 men gently but firmly guided her toward the door, ignoring her protests, ignoring the wide, frightened eyes of her co-workers watching the entire scene unfold. A black car waited outside, its windows tinted so dark that no one could see inside. As Sophia was guided into the back seat, her hands trembling, her mind spinning with fear and confusion, she had no idea that she was about to meet one of the most dangerous, powerful men in the entire city, a man who did not forgive mistakes easily, and who now believed, because of one accidental text message, that Sophia Reyes belonged to him. The car doors closed with a heavy, final sound, and as the city passed by outside the tinted windows, Sophia realized with growing dread that her simple, quiet life had just ended the moment she hit send on a message never meant to reach him at all. The car moved smoothly through the city, but for Sophia, every second felt like a lifetime. She sat between silence and fear, staring at the tinted windows, watching the blurred shapes of buildings pass by. The two men in front did not speak. They did not even glance back at her. It was as if she had already stopped being a person to them and had become simply a task to complete. "Where are we going?" Sophia asked, her voice shakier than she wanted it to be. "You will see soon enough," the driver said, his eyes never leaving the road. Sophia's mind kept replaying the message she had accidentally sent. A silly joke, meant for her best friend, somehow ending up in the hands of a man powerful enough to send two grown men to pull her out of her workplace without a single explanation. She felt sick with worry, imagining every horrible possibility of what waited for her. The car finally stopped in front of a tall glass building in the richest part of the city, a place Sophia had only ever seen from a distance, never imagining she would step inside it, especially not like this. The two men escorted her through a private entrance, past security guards who nodded silently, clearly expecting her arrival, and into an elevator that rose quickly toward the top floor. When the elevator doors opened, Sophia stepped into a massive penthouse office, all dark wood, glass walls, and a view of the entire city glowing beneath the afternoon sun. And there, standing near the window with his back turned, was a man who seemed to command the very air around him without even trying. He turned slowly, and Sophia's breath caught in her throat. Alexander Cross was not what she expected. She had imagined someone older, rougher, more obviously frightening. Instead, she saw a man maybe in his early 30s, tall, sharp jawline, dark hair perfectly styled, wearing a black suit that fit him like it had been made just for this moment. His eyes were a deep, unreadable brown, calm on the surface but holding something dangerous underneath, like still water hiding a strong current beneath it. "Miss Reyes," he said, his voice smooth and confident. "Finally." "I do not understand what is happening," Sophia said, trying to sound braver than she felt. "Your men pulled me out of my job. I have no idea who you are." "But you know exactly who I am," Alexander said, walking closer, his steps slow and deliberate. "Or at least, you know enough to send me a message like that." "That message was a mistake," Sophia said quickly. "It was meant for my friend. Your number must have gotten mixed up with hers somehow. I am sorry if it caused any confusion, but this is a huge misunderstanding." Alexander studied her carefully, his eyes narrowing slightly, as if trying to decide whether to believe her or not. "A misunderstanding," he repeated slowly. "Do you know how many messages I receive every single day? Threats, business offers, warnings from enemies. Do you know how rare it is for someone to speak to me the way you did in that message? Bold, fearless, almost daring me." "I did not know it was you," Sophia said firmly. "I would never speak to a stranger like that on purpose." "And yet," Alexander said, stopping just a few feet away from her, "here you are, standing in my office, still speaking to me without an ounce of the fear everyone else shows the moment they walk through that door." Sophia's heart pounded, though she tried desperately not to let it show on her face. "Maybe I am terrified," she admitted honestly. But being scared does not mean I will stop asking for an explanation. Why did you bring me here? What do you actually want from me? For a moment, Alexander said nothing, simply studying her with an intensity that made her feel like he could see straight through every wall she tried to put up. Then, slowly, the corner of his mouth lifted into a small, dangerous smile. "Curiosity," he finally said. "You accidentally sent me a message that no one else in the city would dare send, even on purpose. I wanted to see the woman brave enough, or foolish enough, to speak to me like that. So this was just curiosity?" Sophia asked, disbelief clear in her voice. "You had me practically kidnapped for my job because you were curious?" "I prefer the word invited," Alexander said smoothly. "It did not feel like an invitation." "Then allow me to make up for that," he said, gesturing toward a chair near his desk. "Sit. Talk with me. And if, after this conversation, you still wish to leave and never see me again, my men will take you home safely, no questions asked." Sophia hesitated, glancing toward the door, calculating whether she truly had a choice in this moment. But something about his eyes, something underneath the arrogance and control, made her curious despite the danger clearly surrounding this entire situation. She sat down slowly, keeping her back straight, refusing to let him see just how frightened she still was underneath her forced calm. "Fine," she said. "Talk." Alexander sat across from her, studying her with quiet interest, like a man examining something rare and unexpected. "Tell me about yourself, Sophia Reyes," he said. "Because I do not simply bring people to this office without reason, and something tells me you are about to become far more interesting to me than a simple accident." Sophia opened her mouth to respond, but before she could speak, the office door burst open suddenly, and one of Alexander's men rushed in, his face pale with urgency. "Sir," the man said quickly, "we have a problem. Someone leaked information about tonight's shipment. Rossi's men know the location." Alexander's entire demeanor shifted in an instant, the calm charm disappearing, replaced by something sharp and dangerous. He stood quickly, his eyes hardening. "How is that possible?" he asked, his voice low and controlled, though clearly furious underneath. "We are not sure yet, sir. But there is something else." The man hesitated, glancing nervously toward Sophia. "The leak happened around the same time Miss Reyes's message reached your phone last night." The room went completely silent. Alexander turned slowly to look at Sophia. Sophia stared at Alexander, shock and confusion written clearly across her face. "What are you talking about? I do not know anything about a shipment or a leak. I sent a joke text to my best friend last night. That is the only thing I did." Alexander studied her closely, his sharp eyes searching for any sign of a lie. Years of running a dangerous business had taught him to read people quickly, to notice the smallest twitch of guilt hiding behind someone's words. But looking at Sophia now, all he saw was genuine confusion and fear, nothing that matched the calm confidence of someone hiding a betrayal. "Get me everything on this leak," Alexander said to his man without looking away from Sophia. "Every detail. I want to know exactly how Rossi's men found out about tonight's shipment." The man nodded quickly and rushed out of the room, leaving Alexander and Sophia alone again, though the atmosphere had changed completely. The earlier curiosity in his eyes had been replaced with sharp, careful calculation. "I promise you," Sophia said firmly, standing up from her chair, "I have nothing to do with whatever business problems you are dealing with. I work at a coffee shop. I do not know anyone named Rossi. I do not know anything about shipments." "And yet the timing is troubling," Alexander said, his voice quiet but firm. "Your message arrived at my private number, a number almost no one has access to, at the exact same time information about tonight's operation somehow reached my enemies." "That is a coincidence," Sophia said. "A terrible, unlucky coincidence, but a coincidence nonetheless." Alexander walked slowly toward his desk, picking up a tablet and scrolling through something quickly, his jaw tight with focus. "I do not usually believe in coincidences, Miss Reyes. Not in my line of work. Coincidences get people killed." Sophia felt a cold chill run through her at his words. "Then what exactly are you accusing me of?" "I have not accused you of anything," Alexander said, looking up at her. "Yet." The word hung heavy in the air between them, dangerous and threatening despite his calm tone. Sophia's hands began to shake slightly, though she forced herself to stand tall, refusing to let him see just how frightened she truly was. "Look," she said, trying to keep her voice steady, "I understand you have enemies, people trying to hurt your business. But I am not one of them. I did not even know you existed until this morning, when your men showed up at my job and forced me into a car." Alexander was quiet for a long moment, studying her carefully. Something about her honesty, the way her voice cracked slightly with genuine fear rather than practiced deception, made him pause. He had dealt with liars his entire life. This did not feel like a lie. "Sit down," he finally said, his voice softening just slightly. "If you are truly innocent in this, I will find out soon enough. My men are already tracing the source of the leak. But until we know for certain, you will remain here, under my protection." "Protection, or captivity?" Sophia asked bitterly. "Does it matter what we call it," Alexander said, "if the result keeps you alive?" Sophia's breath caught at his words. "What do you mean, keeps me alive? Am I in danger?" Alexander's expression grew serious. "If someone deliberately used your message to create a distraction while leaking information about my business, then whoever did this knows about you. And if they know about you, they may see you as a loose end, someone easy to eliminate once they realize their plan did not work exactly as intended." Sophia sank back down into her chair, the reality of her situation crashing over her fully for the first time. This was not simply an embarrassing mistake or a strange misunderstanding anymore. Somehow, without any warning, she had been pulled into a dangerous world of enemies, betrayal, and violence far beyond anything she had ever imagined. "This cannot be happening," she whispered. "I know this is overwhelming," Alexander said, his voice gentler than before, surprising even himself with a sudden concern in his tone. "But you are safer here, within these walls, than anywhere else in this city right now. Safer with the same man who had me dragged out of my job an hour ago?" Sophia asked, a mixture of fear and disbelief in her voice. Despite the tension, a small, almost amused smile flickered across Alexander's face. "I suppose that does sound complicated when you put it that way. You think this is funny?" "No," Alexander said, his smile fading, replaced by something more thoughtful. "I think you are handling an impossible situation with more courage than most people twice your experience in this world. That is rare. And in my line of work, rare things are worth protecting." Sophia looked at him carefully, trying to understand this complicated, dangerous man sitting across from her. One moment cold and calculating, the next surprisingly gentle. She did not know whether to trust him or fear him, and somehow, both feelings existed inside her at the exact same time. Before either of them could speak further, the office door opened again, and the same man from earlier walked back in, his face grim. "Sir, we found something," he said. "The leak did not come from outside. It came from inside your own network. Someone close to you sent the information to Rossi, and used Miss Reyes's message as cover, timing it perfectly so suspicion would fall on an innocent stranger instead of the real traitor." Alexander's expression darkened instantly, anger flashing behind his controlled exterior. "Who?" The man hesitated, glancing nervously between Alexander and Sophia before answering. "We are still confirming, sir. But early signs point to someone very close to you. Someone you have trusted for years." Alexander's hands clenched into fists at his sides, the calm businessman disappearing entirely, replaced by someone dangerous and ready for war against whoever had betrayed him from within his own circle. Sophia watched the transformation happen right in front of her, suddenly understanding more clearly than ever just how deep and dangerous the world she had accidentally stepped into truly was, and realizing that whoever this traitor turned out to be, they had already proven they were willing to sacrifice an innocent stranger's safety without a single moment of hesitation. The penthouse felt colder now, the earlier tension replaced by something sharper, more dangerous. Alexander paced near the window, his mind working quickly, running through every person close enough to him to have access to the information about tonight's shipment. "Give me names," he said finally, turning to his man. "Everyone who knew the location and timing of tonight's operation." The man pulled out a small notebook, reading through a short list of names carefully. Sophia sat quietly in her chair, watching this dangerous, controlled man transform into someone calculating and cold, clearly preparing for war against whoever had betrayed him. "There is one more thing, sir," the man said hesitantly. "The traitor did not just leak the shipment information. They also accessed your private messages last night, right before Miss Reyes's text arrived. It looks like they used the confusion from her message as a distraction, knowing you would be focused on tracing an unknown number instead of noticing the real breach happening at the same time." Alexander's jaw tightened. "So this was planned." "It appears that way, sir." Sophia felt her stomach twist painfully. If this was true, then someone had used her innocent, accidental mistake as a weapon, turning her into an unknowing distraction inside a dangerous plan she had never even known existed. She was not just caught in the middle of danger anymore. She had been used, without her knowledge or consent, as a piece in someone else's dangerous game. "Who would do this?" Sophia asked quietly. "Who hates you enough to plan something this complicated?" Alexander's expression darkened further. "Rossi. He has wanted my territory for years, but he has never been smart enough to plan something this precise on his own. This required inside knowledge. Someone close enough to know my private number, my schedule, my movements." "A traitor inside your own organization," Sophia said slowly. "Yes," Alexander said, his voice low and dangerous. "And I intend to find out exactly who it is." Over the next few hours, Alexander's men moved quickly, gathering information, checking records, questioning trusted associates one by one. Sophia remained in the penthouse, unsure what else to do, watching as the calm, arrogant boss she had first met that morning revealed layer after layer of complexity underneath his controlled exterior. At one point, Marta, an older woman who managed the penthouse and clearly held Alexander's trust, brought Sophia a cup of tea, offering a small, kind smile despite the tension filling the entire building. "You look exhausted," Marta said gently. "This is a lot to take in for someone who was simply making a joke with her friend last night." "That is an understatement," Sophia said, managing a tired, weak laugh despite everything. "Mr. Cross does not usually let strangers stay this long inside his home," Marta said, studying Sophia carefully. "Whatever he sees in you, it is enough to make him break his usual rules." Sophia looked toward the study where Alexander was speaking quietly but intensely with his men, his presence commanding even from a distance. "I do not think he trusts me completely," she said. "Not yet." "Trust takes time in this world," Marta said. "But protection, that he has already decided to give you. I have worked for this family a long time, Miss Reyes. I have never seen him personally involve himself this deeply in protecting someone outside his usual circle." Before Sophia could respond, raised voices echoed from the study, sharp and tense. She stood quickly, moving toward the sound, watching as Alexander confronted a man Sophia had not seen before, someone older, dressed sharply, standing rigid near the desk. "Explain yourself, Daniel," Alexander said, his voice dangerously calm. "You had access to tonight's shipment details. You also had access to my private communications last night." Daniel's face went pale, though he tried to maintain his composure. "Alexander, I have worked for your family for 15 years. I would never betray you." "Then explain the transaction records showing payments from Rossi's accounts directly into yours," Alexander said, sliding a tablet across the desk toward him. Daniel stared at the screen, his hands beginning to shake. "This is not what it looks like." "Then what is it?" Alexander asked, his voice growing harder with every word. Daniel's shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of him instantly. "My daughter," he finally admitted, his voice breaking. "She owes money to dangerous people, gambling debts I could not pay off myself. Rossi found out and offered to erase her debt in exchange for information. I never meant for anyone innocent to get hurt. I just wanted to protect my daughter." The room fell silent, heavy with betrayal and desperation mixed together. Sophia watched Alexander's face carefully, expecting explosive anger, but instead saw something more complicated, a mixture of fury and quiet understanding, a man who perhaps knew all too well the desperate lengths people would go to protect their family. "You should have come to me," Alexander said quietly. "I would have helped you." "I was afraid," Daniel admitted. "Afraid you would see it as weakness. Afraid you would punish my daughter for my mistakes." Alexander closed his eyes briefly, clearly wrestling with years of loyalty now shattered by betrayal. When he opened them again, his voice was steady, though heavy with disappointment. Rossi will pay for using you against me. But you, Daniel, you have broken something that cannot easily be repaired. Daniel nodded slowly, accepting whatever consequence was coming, his eyes filled with regret. Two of Alexander's guards stepped forward, leading him quietly out of the room, leaving behind a heavy silence that filled the entire penthouse. Sophia stood frozen near the doorway, overwhelmed by everything she had just witnessed, understanding now more clearly than ever the complicated, dangerous world Alexander lived inside every single day. Alexander turned toward her slowly, his expression softening slightly when he saw the shock still clear on her face. "Now you understand," he said quietly, "why I could not simply dismiss the timing of your message as pure coincidence." "I am sorry this happened," Sophia said softly. "All of it. Even though I did not mean to cause any of this." "You did not cause this," Alexander said, stepping closer. "Rossi did. Daniel's fear did. You were simply an unfortunate distraction used by people far more dangerous." Sophia looked up at him, something shifting quietly between them despite the chaos surrounding their entire meeting. "So what happens now?" Alexander's eyes studied her carefully, something unreadable and intense passing behind his gaze. "Now," he said slowly, "Rossi knows his plan failed. Which means he will not stop with one attempt. He will come after what he believes weakened me the most tonight." "What is that?" Sophia asked. Alexander stepped even closer, his voice dropping lower. "You, Sophia. He will come after you next." Sophia's heart pounded at Alexander's words. "Me? Why would he come after me? I have nothing to do with any of this. I am not part of your world." "You do not have to be part of my world," Alexander said, his voice low and serious. "You simply have to matter to me. And after tonight, Rossi will believe you do." "But I do not matter to you," Sophia said quickly, though even as she said it, something in her chest tightened uncomfortably, as if the words did not feel entirely true anymore. "We only met a few hours ago." Alexander studied her for a long moment, something complicated passing behind his dark eyes. "Rossi does not need us to matter to each other. He only needs to believe it. And after tonight, after everything that happened because of your message, he will see you as a weakness he can use against me." Sophia sank into the nearest chair, overwhelmed by the impossible situation she had somehow fallen into. "So what do we do now?" "You stay here," Alexander said firmly, "under my protection, until Rossi is dealt with completely." "For how long?" "For as long as it takes to keep you alive," Alexander said simply. Over the following days, the penthouse became something between a fortress and a strange, temporary home for Sophia. Guards patrolled every hallway. Marta kept her company during the long, tense afternoons, sharing stories about the family and slowly helping Sophia understand more about the dangerous world she had unexpectedly stepped into. Alexander remained mostly focused on tracking Rossi's movements, spending long hours in meetings with his men, planning carefully how to end this growing threat once and for all. But every evening, without fail, he would find a few quiet minutes to sit with Sophia, asking about her life, her dreams, slowly revealing pieces of himself in return that surprised her every time. "Why design school?" he asked one evening, sitting across from her near the large window overlooking the city lights. "I love creating things," Sophia said. "Buildings, spaces, places where people feel safe and comfortable. It felt like the opposite of everything chaotic in my life growing up." "And now you are surrounded by more chaos than you ever imagined," Alexander said quietly. "Yes," Sophia admitted with a small, tired laugh. "Life has a strange sense of humor." Alexander smiled slightly, something rare and genuine crossing his usually controlled expression. "For what it is worth, I am sorry you were pulled into this mess so violently." "You keep apologizing," Sophia said, studying him carefully. "That does not seem like something the arrogant, dangerous mafia boss everyone fears would normally do." "Perhaps you bring out a different side of me," Alexander said honestly, surprising even himself with the admission. Before Sophia could respond, one of Alexander's men rushed into the room, his face tense with urgency. "Sir, we have a location on Rossi. He is moving tonight, and our sources suggest he plans to strike here, at the penthouse." Alexander stood instantly, his calm exterior sharpening into something focused and dangerous. "Increase security on every floor. No one gets through those doors without my direct approval." "Yes, sir." As the man rushed out to prepare, Alexander turned to Sophia, his expression serious. "I need you to stay in the safe room tonight. No matter what you hear, do not come out until I personally come to get you." "What is going to happen?" Sophia asked, fear creeping back into her voice. "Rossi is finally making his move," Alexander said. "Which means tonight, this ends, one way or another." Hours later, deep into the night, Sophia sat inside the reinforced safe room hidden behind a bookshelf in Alexander's study, her heart pounding as she listened to faint sounds of chaos somewhere beyond the thick walls. Shouting. The distant sound of gunfire. Heavy footsteps running through hallways. She pressed her hands against her ears, trying to block out the terrifying sounds, praying silently that Alexander and his men would be safe. Despite everything, despite the danger and fear surrounding this entire situation, she realized with surprising clarity that she was not simply worried about her own safety anymore. She was terrified for him. After what felt like hours, though it had truly only been about 20 minutes, the sounds outside slowly quieted. Sophia sat frozen, waiting, until finally, she heard a familiar voice speaking softly through the door. "Sophia, it is safe now. You can come out." She pushed the bookshelf open carefully, finding Alexander standing there, a small cut above his eyebrow, his jacket gone, his shirt slightly torn, but otherwise unharmed. Relief flooded through her so powerfully that, without thinking, she rushed forward and wrapped her arms around him tightly. Alexander stiffened slightly in surprise, clearly unused to such open displays of concern, before slowly wrapping his arms around her in return, holding her close. "You are safe," he said quietly into her hair. "That is what matters." "What happened to Rossi?" Sophia asked, pulling back slightly to look up at him. Alexander's expression darkened. "He escaped, but not without losing most of his men in the attempt. He will not be foolish enough to attack directly again. But that does not mean this is over." "Then what happens now?" Alexander looked down at her, something soft yet fierce burning behind his dark eyes. "Now, I make sure Rossi understands completely that coming after you was the worst mistake of his entire life." Sophia searched his face carefully, seeing beneath the danger and power, something deeper, something that had grown quietly between them despite the chaos surrounding their every moment together. "Alexander," she said softly, "why does protecting me matter so much to you? Be honest with me." Alexander was quiet for a long moment, his hand gently reaching up to brush a strand of hair away from her face, his touch surprisingly tender for a man capable of such ruthless control over his dangerous world. "Because somewhere between that accidental message and tonight," he said quietly, "you stopped being a stranger caught in my world by mistake, and became someone I refused to lose." Sophia stood frozen in Alexander's arms, his words echoing through her mind. Someone I refused to lose. No one had ever spoken to her with such raw, quiet honesty before, especially not a man who had spent their entire time together carefully controlling every word, every action. "You barely know me," she whispered, though her heart was pounding for a completely different reason now. "I know enough," Alexander said softly. "I know you stood in my office terrified, yet still demanded answers instead of simply begging for mercy. I know you have shown more courage in 5 days than most people show in a lifetime. And I know that the thought of Rossi hurting you tonight frightened me more than any threat against my own life ever has." Sophia's breath caught at his words, unsure how to respond to something so unexpected from a man the entire city feared. "This is dangerous," she finally said. "Whatever this is between us." "Everything about my life is dangerous," Alexander admitted. "But for the first time in a very long time, something dangerous also feels worth fighting for." Over the next 2 days, Alexander's men worked quickly to track down what remained of Rossi's scattered operation. Weakened significantly after the failed attack, Rossi retreated into hiding, but Alexander knew a man like that would not simply disappear quietly. Men who lost everything often became the most dangerous, driven by desperation instead of strategy. On the 3rd night, Alexander received the information he had been waiting for. Rossi had been located, hiding in a small warehouse near the edge of the city, attempting to gather what remained of his loyal men for one final, desperate move. "I have to end this tonight," Alexander told Sophia, standing in the study, dressed in dark clothing, his expression serious and focused. Once Rossi is dealt with completely, this danger disappears from your life for good. "Let me come with you," Sophia said suddenly, surprising even herself with the request. "Absolutely not," Alexander said immediately. "This is not a place for you." "I am not asking to fight," Sophia said. "But I cannot sit here again, hiding behind a bookshelf, wondering if you are safe. Please, Alexander. Let me be close, even if it is only waiting nearby." Alexander studied her for a long moment, clearly torn between his instinct to protect her completely and his growing understanding that Sophia was not someone who wished to remain a passive bystander in her own life. "You stay in the car," he finally said. "With guards. No matter what happens, you do not step outside that vehicle until I come for you myself." Sophia nodded firmly. "I can agree to that." That night, Alexander led his men toward the warehouse, the city quiet and dark around them, tension thick in the cold night air. Sophia sat inside the armored car nearby, her hands clenched tightly together, watching from a distance as shadows moved quickly toward the building. Minutes stretched painfully slow. Then, sudden flashes of gunfire lit up the darkness, followed by shouting, chaos briefly erupting before falling back into unsettling silence. Sophia's heart pounded violently, every second feeling like an eternity as she waited for any sign of what was happening inside. Finally, the warehouse doors opened, and figures began walking out, Alexander's men, moving with the calm confidence of a battle won rather than lost. Sophia searched desperately among them until she saw him, walking steadily toward the car, unharmed, his expression tired but relieved. She stepped out of the car before the guards could stop her, running toward him without hesitation. "Is it over?" she asked breathlessly. "It is over," Alexander confirmed, pulling her gently into his arms. Rossi surrendered once he realized he had no men left willing to fight for a losing cause. He will face justice within our world, quietly, permanently. He will never threaten either of us again. Relief washed over Sophia so powerfully that she felt tears forming in her eyes, the weight of the past several days finally beginning to lift from her shoulders. "I was so scared," she admitted quietly. "I know," Alexander said gently, brushing his thumb softly against her cheek. "But it is finished now. You are safe, completely and permanently." They stood together in the quiet night, the danger finally behind them, the city lights glowing softly in the distance. Sophia looked up at him, studying the man who had entered her life through nothing more than an accidental, careless text message, a man who had transformed from a frightening stranger into someone she now could not imagine her life without. "What happens to us now?" she asked softly. "Once all the danger disappears, what is left between us?" Alexander smiled slightly, something warm and genuine lighting up his usually guarded expression. "I believe," he said slowly, "that depends entirely on whether you are willing to give a dangerous, arrogant man like me an honest chance, without the excuse of danger forcing us together." Sophia laughed softly, despite everything they had just survived together. "You are asking me on a real date, aren't you? After everything we have been through?" "I am," Alexander admitted, a rare boyish smile appearing briefly on his face. "Properly this time. No kidnapping, no danger, no urgent business emergencies interrupting us." "That sounds surprisingly normal for someone in your line of work," Sophia teased gently. "Perhaps it is time I learned to balance both worlds," Alexander said softly, looking down at her with something deep and certain in his eyes. especially if it means keeping you close, permanently, by choice instead of by accident. Sophia smiled up at him, her heart finally settling after days of fear and uncertainty, replaced now by something warm, hopeful, and undeniably real. "Then yes," she said softly. "I would like that. A real date. A real chance." Alexander leaned down slowly, pressing a gentle kiss against her forehead, a promise made quietly beneath the city lights, far different from the bold, dangerous command that had first brought them together days earlier. What had started as an accidental text message, meant for someone else entirely, had somehow led Sophia into the arms of one of the most powerful, dangerous men in the entire city, a man who had once demanded she be brought to him out of curiosity and arrogance, but who now stood beside her out of something far deeper, far more real, something neither of them had expected. Yet both were finally ready to choose completely, together.